Hi, late starters. What would you do if a loved one was faced with a life threatening health problem that the doctors couldn't solve? Well, if you were Tom Petty, no relation to the singer, you would research the situation and find a way to make a major health change, not only taking care of his wife's issue, but also a lifelong health issue that he himself had. Tune in to today's episode where you learn more about it. Hello, dreamers. Welcome to the Late Starters Club, giving you the inspiration, mindset, and tools you need to start something midlife and beyond. Remember, it's never too late to follow your dreams. Hi, late starters. It's Andrea Vall, your host, and I am joined by a friend of mine, Thomas Petty. Tom Petty, not the Tom Petty.
Well, I'm the only one that I know.
That's right. That's right. And we are going to dive into Tom's story of how he used some alternative healing methods to heal both him and his wife of some different things just recently in the last few years. So, so welcome, Tom.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm
Yeah,
looking forward to this.
I know it's super great. And on this podcast we talk about, people have started a new endeavor, and that includes new healthy, healthy lifestyles, healthy habits, and things that are new to them, in midlife. And I've known you kind of as an entrepreneur, so this is fun to kind of get to talk to you about this other side of your life, which is dealing with all these health challenges that you and your wife have come across. So, so why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of what was happening, how you've changed everything related to food and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, my wife and I, we've been married for 23 years now. And we're just sort of going along as middle-aged couple. We've got two teenage girls, my wife's two daughters. I'm the evil stepfather to them. And, just kind of rolling along through life. We both had our careers, doing our thing. And on my wife's birthday in 2011, she got up. She had taken the day off from work because it was her birthday.
Yeah.
She had gotten up and was complaining that she was feeling kind of dizzy and that her speech was slurred. And I said, well, are you sure you haven't just had a little too much birthday cheer? She's, no, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. I haven't had any of that. So we didn't think too much of it. And she was on some different medications. And I had looked online, and one of the medications had a side effect of slurred speech or, dizziness. And it's like, okay, well, maybe that's what's going on. So the next day, it hadn't gotten any better. So we talked to her doctor, and her doctor was like, no, it's not the medicine. Get her to the ER right now.
Wow.
And so I took her to the ER, and they diagnosed her as having had a stroke. And pretty young, in her 40s, and gave her a bunch of drugs and sent her on her way. Said, take these pills. So 2 months later, this happened again, only worse, and went back to the ER. And yeah, they did an MRI. They could see it in her brain. And they're like, well, this may not be a stroke. Maybe this is multiple sclerosis, but we're really not sure. This happened several more times over the course of several months. And then in July of 2012, the night before, we had been to her ex-husband's birthday party and had a nice time. And she woke up the next morning and was completely paralyzed on the left side of her body. Couldn't move her arm, couldn't move her leg, and just like left side was dead. And so I struggled to get her into the bathroom and, get her dressed and stuff, and went off to the ER again. But, meanwhile, she's seen a bunch of specialists. And at this point, they're saying, well, we think she has brain cancer. And we can see the lesion on her brain stem, and the type of cancer that they were talking about meant that she probably had 3 to 4 months to live. And they were going to do brain surgery to actually see if they could take a piece out and look at it and see if that's really what was going on. And at the last second, they backed out and they said, you know what? The MRI shows that the lesion has shrunk, and lesions don't, the cancer doesn't shrink. So it's not cancer, but we still don't know what it is.
Mm.
So, this is a very long story, but I'm trying to keep it short. But spin forward 3.5 years, she continued to improve from being paralyzed on the left side. She regained some mobility, but not all of it. 3.5 years, she had a devastating event where she nearly died. And ultimately, they did do brain surgery on her. They took a piece out and finally said, oh, this is what you have. Now we know. And it's a very, very rare autoimmune disease that is attacking the blood vessels in your brain, and it's causing stroke-like symptoms. I have my own autoimmune disease. I have psoriasis. Psoriasis attacks my skin and leaves ugly rashes and so forth. So through all of this, I'm doing research like a madman because all the king's horses and all the king's men can't figure out what's going on with my wife. And I finally concluded that this had to be an external factor. There had to be something that happened that was causing this. This isn't just some mystery disease. There's a reason for it. And I concluded that it had to be something related to food, that her body was reacting to food in some way and it was causing her body to attack her brain. The doctors just scoffed at us. And no, it's not that. Absolutely not. We don't know what it is, but it's not food. It can't be food. So, but we don't know what causes it. We don't know. Sometimes it goes away. Sometimes it doesn't go away. We don't know why, but it's not food. So, long story, but basically we cleaned up our diet, the standard American diet, or SAD, as I call it, and kicked that to the curb. And over the last 10 years, she's continued to heal. Her disease has gone away. She's gone from being wheelchair bound to using a walker to using a cane to now being mobile. She's still disabled because she has brain damage, but she's able to get around by herself and her disease has gone away. Meanwhile, my disease went away. So my skin, my terrible psoriasis that I've had since day one, has healed, and it's now 99% in remission because of what we've changed.
Wow, that is amazing. That is amazing to go from such a debilitating situation, almost death,
Mm-hmm.
to where she's at now with
Mm-hmm.
just food.
Mm-hmm.
So walk us through some of the research that you did. How did you find, I've heard so many things about autoimmune disorders and food related things. How did you find what the proper diet would be for you, and how did you research all this?
Well, I started researching, and I don't remember exactly how I got to this point, but I was just looking for any answer. And there were several books that I read. One was and all three of these books are by physicians. And one of them is Grain Brain by Dr. David Perlmutter. And it talks about the damage that grains do to us because of the lectins and other proteins in the grains. Our bodies are really not designed to consume and digest grains. And yet it's at the very bottom of the food pyramid. This is what you should be eating most of,
Right.
is grains. And our bodies react to grains in ways that can cause autoimmune disease and other disorders.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
I love bread. I love bread. Is
Well, yeah,
so
I know.
yummy.
I do too. I do.
Yeah.
Give me a slab of bread and some butter, and I'm
Mm.
in hog heaven. So, so that was one book that was a real eye opener. Another book is by Dr. Terry Walls, and it's called The Walls Protocol. And it's basically his thing is kind of eat the rainbow. we don't eat enough fruits and vegetables
Mm.
in our standard American diet. And really, we need to eat a lot more fruits and vegetables and a lot less of the grains and what I call brown foods, grains and legumes and those kinds of foods. And then the third book that just blew my mind is by Dr. Stephen Gundry, and it's called The Plant Paradox.
Mm.
And he talks about how legumes, especially, are very toxic for us because of lectins and other proteins. The beans and peanuts are also a legume, have these chemicals that are actually designed to um, kill the insects that are eating them.
Oh,
And those of
interesting.
us that have autoimmune diseases are actually very sensitive to those lectins and other chemicals, and causes our autoimmune diseases to get much worse.
Mm. Interesting. Yeah, my peanut sandwich at lunch wasn't good, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. And I apologize. My dog is barking in the background.
it's all right.
Somebody's putting their trash cans out. It's an emergency.
Alert.
Yeah, yeah. High alert. Always high alert. But yeah, it's we and grains and legumes are heavily touted as being health foods. They're promoted by the government because they're heavily subsidized by the government, and when in reality, those two food groups are really not doing most of us any good. And by eliminating primarily those two things, plus we eliminated sugar as well as dairy,
Mm,
and primarily ate meat, fish, vegetables, and fruits. And I tend not to eat a lot of fruit because it has a lot of sugar in it, which I prefer to avoid.
mhm,
So by just kind of going down to meat, fish, fruits, and vegetables, our bodies completely transformed and completely changed, and actually our diseases reversed themselves. And I went in for a physical, and my doctor is like, "What the hell are you doing?" It's like,
wow.
you've got the blood work of a teenager. It's like, what are you doing? My cholesterol dropped to 120,
Wow,
and my blood pressure went down to 90 over 60, and there's all kinds of blood markers, just like,
right.
wow. you know so
That's
it was
awesome.
an interesting journey.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. So did you like join any groups, or did you just do, were you kind of plugged in or tapped into any online, groups or anything like that, or were you kind of doing a lot of this on your own?
Nope, this was all on our own. It was,
Wow.
and my wife was a reluctant participant in this. She was like, "Nah, I really like my Diet Dr. Pepper, and I really like my, and take away her chocolate." And she was like, hard no on that one."
Oh, wait a second. Wait a second.
So
No
yeah,
chocolate. But
yeah.
is that I mean, is it the sugar factor, or is it just the I mean, I guess it's cocoa bean, is that part of
Yeah,
the
well,
reason
it's
there?
two things. Most chocolate that we consume has a ton of sugar in it. Milk
Mhm.
chocolate, it's just a sugar bomb.
Yeah.
But the chocolate is a forbidden food on the autoimmune protocol. So you sort of
Okay.
have to test it and see if it's okay or not. It doesn't seem to bother me. It doesn't seem to bother my wife.
Right.
So we do eat dark chocolate, very dark
Right.
chocolate, that
Okay.
doesn't have
Okay.
any added sugar in
Okay. All right.
it.
So are you like how does this affect your daily life? Is it challenging to go out to eat? Is it
Yeah.
challenging to, go to parties where they've got all kinds of little pastry, bready things and things like that?
Exactly. Yeah. Going to other people's houses is the biggest challenge. At a restaurant, you can, okay, well, I'll get a salad, or I'll get it's not too hard to find something that you can eat.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, going over to somebody's house, excuse me, It's like, Tom, why aren't you eating? It's like, sorry, I can't eat any of the food that you have put
Yeah.
out. "Oh, why didn't you
Right.
tell us? It's like, so
Yeah.
yeah, that's a challenge. And so sometimes I pre-eat because I know that it's going to be hard to eat.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, but at the same time, you've seen the consequences are,
mhm.
essentially near death, and so, it just makes it a complete no-brainer to just say, "We have to eat this way." So
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, it's cultural,
Mm.
we eat pasta, we eat,
Yep,
hamburger and french fries, all of
right,
these things that's just normal to eat, and so it was a lot of work to change those habits, and it's like, "No, I can't eat that because
right,
of whatever is in it."
right.
So, now it's just sort of natural for us, and, every once in a while, I'm going for something, and my she's now much better at it, and "Are you sure you want to eat that, Tom?" "Yes, I know." So she keeps me honest rather than me trying to
Yeah.
drag her along.
Right, right. Yeah, now, do you I know that you kind of have become sort of an advocate for this as well for people who especially who have psoriasis, right? You've
Mhm,
been kind of working with people. Have you seen results from people who have
mhm.
adopted this diet as
Absolutely.
well?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I was just talking to one of my clients the other day that he's jumped into the deep end with the program. And 3 or 4 months in, he's like, "Yeah, my severe psoriasis is about 80, excuse me, 80% better than it was 3 months ago." So he's
Wow.
seeing dramatic changes in his body. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's almost a miracle because the story is that when I was born, um, they handed my mother her brand new baby and said, "Gee, we're sorry, Mrs. Petty, but your son's never going to have nice skin." And it was just from day one that I was an ugly baby and had ugly skin.
Oh, wow. Wow, that must have been challenging just growing up with that as a young
Absolutely.
kid and
Oh yeah,
all of
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, now they call it bullying, and, back then it was teasing, but, yeah,
Mhm.
it was brutal. It was brutal going through that,
Right.
and I had the double whammy of severe acne on top of severe psoriasis too, so it was like, yeah, I was a major target.
Yeah, and to think, if they can help kids, that would be just so
Mhm,
amazing too. I don't know if you've
mhm.
seen that happening with any children you've worked with or things like that.
Yeah, and, I've actually been talking with a mom who has a 3.5-year-old girl that, has what's called pustular psoriasis,
Yeah.
and, it's the doctors want to put her on the biologic injections, even though it's not approved for someone under 4 years of age.
Mm,
And I'm like, "Do not put her on the toxic medications because it's an immunosuppressant, and it leaves you vulnerable to, infections, to tuberculosis, to cancer, it just clobbers your immune system just to heal your skin, but
right.
it leaves you vulnerable to so much else."
Right. Right, and if it could be corrected with diet in such a short time too, your client that saw results within 3
Mhm.
months,
Mhm.
that's amazing. That's such a short time. I don't know how quickly were you now your wife took a little longer. Obviously, she had such a longer road to come back from
Right.
wheelchair bound to walking, but how quickly did you see results when you changed your diet?
Well, it was over a period of several years, but it was like, "Hey, wait a minute, my skin is starting to clear up here.
Yeah,
I'm on the right track."
right.
And what's interesting about psoriasis is that those of us that have psoriasis, and there are 8 million of us in the United States, it affects about 2% of the population. And we get what's called flares, where suddenly your skin just blows up and your psoriasis gets really bad and just blows up. And I say it's like being hit upside the head with a 2x4
Mm.
because you don't know where it's coming from. You don't know how long it's going to last. You don't know how bad it's going to get. And usually it takes a couple months for it to cool back down again. But you don't know what causes it. And I finally figured out what actually causes it. And it's you eat something a month ago, and that's what causes your psoriasis flare. So it's not something you ate yesterday or last week. It's actually a month ago because your skin is continually turning over, and it takes about 40 days for the dermis, the underlayer of your skin, to bubble up to the surface. And so when you've got the inflammation going on at the bottom of the skin, it takes a month for it to show up at the surface as
Mm.
psoriasis.
Hmm.
And that finally hit me one day. It's like, oh my God, that's why. That's why,
Yeah.
this is going on. And so you have to think back. It's like, what did I eat a month ago? It's like, I don't know
Right.
what I had for breakfast yesterday.
Right. Right. And could it be simple, something as simple as like a piece of cake or something that, or like,
Absolutely.
yeah, right.
Yeah, you
Something
have to
small.
identify what I call trigger foods. And one of
Yeah.
my big trigger foods is coffee. And
Oh.
I love coffee.
Oh
And
no.
it was the hardest food in the world for me to give up. But I finally figured out that I'm really sensitive to coffee. And during the pandemic, I hadn't had any coffee at all. And a buddy of mine that I've known since first grade, he was like, "Hey, I'm going to be in town. Let's catch up." And so we met up at a Starbucks, and I hadn't had any coffee in months. And so I just, all right, great. I'm going to have a latte. And I'll be damned. A month later, my skin blew up, and it's like,
Mm.
oh. So it's like I can never have coffee again.
Oh wow.
So my mom
Oh.
was. We were over at her house for lunch the other day, and she put out some cookies that she had made, and I took one bite, and I'm like, "Does this have coffee in it?" She goes, "Yeah, it has a little bit of coffee in it." I'm sorry, mom, and I went over to the trash and spit it out. It's like
Uh,
I can't risk it.
yeah.
It's just
Oh,
so
wow.
yeah, it takes time to try to figure those things out.
Right.
What are the trigger foods that causes you to blow up?
Right, right. That's so interesting, and it's so interesting that you figured that out. I'm sure it's like you said, it's probably different for everyone, right? So,
Hmm.
yeah, that's
Yeah, there are known things that you should avoid. Primarily the grains, legumes, and sugar. Sugar is
mhm.
hugely inflammatory. Dairy is most American dairy comes from the Hereford cows,
Mm.
and the Hereford cows have a genetic mutation that causes the protein in dairy milk that a lot of us are sensitive to, and even people that have lactose intolerance may not be lactose intolerant; they may just be intolerant of that protein change.
Yeah,
And sheep milk and goat milk and human milk does not have that protein in it.
yeah,
Those alternative forms of dairy may be okay.
yeah, yeah. Wow, yeah, I've heard, you know, particularly in America, we've got a lot of challenges with our food chain, so
Yeah.
it's frustrating. So let's talk about this
Oops, I just lost your audio.
Oh, did you? Oh,
Oh, now
shoot.
you're back.
Okay. All right. So I'll say that question again.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this journey at this time of your life. Like, what w- do you think there was anything that has helped you tackling this problem at midlife that would have been more challenging or difficult to tackle at a younger age in your 20s or something like that? Do you think there's skills you had uh, now that helped you get to this problem faster?
Yeah, well, first I was highly motivated, but it's I've never really thought too hard about what I put into my mouth. It's always been, well, if it's on the shelf, it must be healthy. It must be safe. I mean, I know potato chips aren't healthy food, but they, must not be terrible for you because, it's not going to kill you to eat some potato chips. But I never really thought too much about it. And I always felt like organic produce, oh, that's just an excuse to pry more money out of my wallet.
Mm,
And the more I've researched it, the more I'm a huge advocate of organic produce and even growing your own food as much as you can. so that you got the freshest food possible without the pesticides and herbicides and the other chemicals and fertilizers that they put on the food.
Mhm.
Um, so it's, 30, 40 years ago, I wasn't thinking anything about what I was putting into my mouth.
Right,
And now I'm hyper focused on what I do put into my mouth and make sure that
right.
I only eat the right things.
Right, right. And you've been doing a lot of growing of your own food, right?
Hmm.
You've got a great garden and all that, and, so that's awesome and amazing. What has that been fun to grow all your own stuff?
Yeah. So I tried, um, when I first started doing the research, it's like, all right, I'm going to put some vegetable boxes in the backyard and grow vegetables, and my wife can sit on the sides and, pick flowers, and we'll plant flowers and all this stuff. And, one year we'd get amazing, this food. The next year it was like nothing. And,
Mhm.
and it was so frustrating trying to grow food consistently because you get the bugs and you get the heat, and I'd forget to water it, and, all this stuff. So we finally discovered a thing called a tower garden. It's from a company called Juice Plus, and it's kind of like hydroponics turned on its side. So
Mm.
it's called aeroponics. And so you grow food vertically in a 2 or 3 square foot section, and it's all automated. So there's a tank of water on the bottom that you put the food in, and it has its own cycle. It waters the plants. The plants grow 30% faster than they would if you were growing them in the ground. There's no weeds, there's no dirt, there's no bugs. You literally just pick it and put it on your plate and eat it. And
Mhm.
you cannot get any fresher food than that. Even if you buy what are they called, it's not a CV box, but you get a vegetable delivery box and
Oh,
stuff
right,
that's
right.
farmed to your front door. Even
Yep.
that stuff's been picked several days ago, so there's
Mm.
loss of nutrition. So yeah, the tower garden is wonderful because it's all automated and you don't have to do anything,
Yeah.
and it just takes care of itself.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I am so glad that you and your wife are on a great path of healing, and I think it's amazing that you are spreading the word about this, especially to, obviously to people who have autoimmune diseases. I think
Hmm.
that's a huge thing. I like how you've specialized as well into psoriasis and focusing on helping that group of people since you are a part of that group as
I
well.
are one.
Yeah. So, one thing that I always love to ask my guests, is one of their favorite quotes, or what is something that inspires you. So I'm a quote junkie. So
Okay, well, so my favorite quote is, "Don't sweat the petty stuff, and don't pet the sweaty stuff." I don't know what the last half means, but I like the first half because it's got my name in it.
I think that is really smart advice for going through life. I think.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, when my wife was sick, I became hyper focused on today. It's like I can't do anything about yesterday, and it's gone and done, and that's it. And tomorrow will be what it is. So it's really just don't sweat the petty stuff. It's
Mhm.
just worry about today, worry about taking care of business today, and just forget about the rest of what maybe or was. It's just
Yeah.
not worth the energy.
Yeah, that is awesome because just being present in the moment is,
Hmm.
such a beautiful thing, and
Hmm.
so great to be mindful of what is around us and the gifts that are right in front of our eyes, right?
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
so
Absolutely.
that is
Absolutely.
beautiful. So, Tom, tell us where people can connect with you, learn more about you, get more information about your psoriasis. And also, I want to make sure if people are listening to the podcast that we will have links to the books that Tom mentioned in the show
Hmm.
notes here. But where can people connect with you?
Yeah. Well, my website is called controlmypsoriasis.org. It's not .com. So it's controlmypsoriasis.org, and there's a video that you can watch and get connected with me there. You can find me on Instagram as at the psoriasis guy. And I'm on most social media platforms, although I did just delete my Twitter account. So
Yeah, I'm almost there with you. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tom, and just so much love to you and your wife, and look forward to connecting with you again soon.
Absolutely. And like I said, by email, you got to come visit me next summer when you're out
I
my
know
direction.
I've got it
So,
on my it's on my list to say
all
hello
right.
when I'm
All
out
right.
there.
Cool.
All right. Okay, thanks, Tom. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Hope that was helpful, and make sure you grab the free guide, Top Tools for Late Starters, on the website at latestartersclub.com. And let's turn dreaming into doing.